What's the strangest thing you've caught people doing in high school? In 8th or 9th grade during gym class we found these two guys under the bleachers playing Yu-Gi-Oh nearly naked. When we asked what the hell they were doing, they said they were playing strip Yu-Gi-Oh. I've never seen a gym coach with such a pure look of disappointment. I worked at an inner city high school when I lived in Minneapolis. I remember once I had to sub for a choir class for just 1 hour. The teacher got into a car accident. I left the room for 10 minutes. And when I got back, probably 10 kids were smoking out the window and 3 pairs in heated makeout sessions. Somebody had hijacked the overhead projector and les porn was playing for the class and there was one lone white girl ducking studying. She was strange. My high school had this double stall in the girls' room. 2 toilets in 1 stall. That wasn't even the weird part. It was considered weird if you didn't use it with someone. I once walked into a classroom I thought was empty to find the 4 nerdy, no apparent personality kids from my grade dispersed throughout the room. Arms at their sides. Jumping up and down as high as they could. In complete silence. Ducking weird. A guy in the back of the classroom starts making weird noises. So everyone turns to look at him. It is very obvious the kid is having some serious problems breathing, so the nurse is called. By the time she gets there he's starting to go blue. He's known for liking his drugas. So the nurse is screaming at his friends, "What did he take? You won't get in trouble. Just tell me what he took." But they all just ducking stood there. Out of sheer desperation. Or maybe just checking to see if his throat was at all open. She just plunges her hand into his mouth, pauses, and yanks something out of his throat. Dude had swallowed a ducking morphine patch. There were 2 big mysteries everyone was trying to solve at my high school. The first was shortly after a science class got iPad minis. With cameras. Within the first 2 weeks of us having them, someone had managed to take a big dick pic. In the middle of class. With full lighting. Implying they didn't do it under the table. The rest of the week was spent trying to match the big dig with its owner. A female version of this happened too. Someone was looking at porn blogs on Twitter when they found a picture of some girl's bobs. What made them interested was that the girl was wearing one of our pay shirts in the picture. Like the above story. The titty mystery, or as I called it, the titstory, lit up Twitter, or you could say tit up titter, for the rest of the weekend. Neither culprit was ever found. But I really hope they found each other and started dating. One time a couple at school got walked in on by another student while they were trying nail in an empty classroom. And using hand sanitizer as lube. Desperation at its finest. One day in 6th grade I saw some 7th and 8th graders purposely hyperventilating themselves for about 30 seconds and then having a friend put them in sort of a chokehold position. To squeeze their arteries in their necks just for the head rush it would give you. I remember going home and telling my mom what I saw and she freaked the duck out and never let me walk to school for the rest of that year. Edit. Whoops, forgot this wasn't in high school but still pretty stupid scary. 2 girls in my high school tried to poison another girl by dumping a scoop of copper sulfate into her Slurpee, or slushy whatever you call it. In the middle of class too. They thought it would heal her right off the bat. But she took a sip. Spit it out and screamed. Everyone saw. Everyone knew. And the teacher was pissed. After the police came and all 3 girls left the classroom. He muttered seriously. A chemistry lab and they try and use copper sulfate. He sounded disappointed in their choice of chemical. The 2 girls did end up getting charged. And expelled. The girl who was the victim left the school shortly after too. The monster sheet. Junior year someone took a sheet in one of the men's bathrooms. It must have been at least 5 Corix. But seriously, this sheet was of such massive proportions that it physically could not be flushed and was left there almost all day. News of the movement spread quickly and they actually needed to put an assistant principal outside the bathroom because kids from all over the school were trying to see it. Eventually they had a janitor shovel it out of the toilet and dispose of it. I feel bad for that janitor. And the anus that produced such a monstrosity. If you take a single staple and bend it and stab it through the eraser on the end of a pencil so that it looks like two prongs, you can then stick this into an electrical outlet and it will explode with a loud pop and a bright blue flash, and it would leave a big scorch mark all around the outlet. My friends and I would do this at opportune moments during class. Never got caught. Would blame it on aliens. 2 senior year class presidents having sex in an empty classroom. Janitor assisting retarded kid in taking a sheet. He needs a raise. Kids handing out razor blades to slice people bags. As a joke, of course. Same kids later went around with the pointy part of a compass. Stabbing people. Again. Jokes. And yes, they were regularly expelled from school. Smoking crushed up candy. Candy Crush before it was cool. A guy I went to high school with was into older women. He's really good looking. And tons of girls were into him, but nope. Only the oldest for him. When he was 17 and 18 he was sleeping with women in their 50s. Sometimes 60s. Our senior year he slept with a paraeducator. While her son was in the next room. Who also happened to be a senior at our high school. Oh. And she was deaf. And he told everyone about all the deaf sex noises she was making. Some kid I knew in high school told me he had been masturbating into a mason jar and saving his cum. He didn't specify why he was saving his cum, but anyway. His pet ferret had somehow gotten into the jar, and by the time he found out, the ferret's face was covered in semen. The thing that stood out to him, and what has painted a picture in my head since, was there was thick pearl necklace connecting the jar to the ferret's nose when he found it. Lol, one kid was beating his meter geography teacher during class. He wasn't even at the back. Girl in my class liked to eat paper. You know when you rip a piece of paper out of a notebook and you're left with those scraps around the spiral? That was her favorite. She would also eat tissues. I was a freshman and was into maybe the second quarter of the school year. My English teacher was a pretty straight-edged, sarcastic, and sometimes humorless lady. One day, she announces to us from the front of the classroom that it was her birthday. One of the girls in my class freaks out overjoyed. Gets up out of her seat. Runs over to the teacher. And essentially starts twerking on her. No one laughed or knew what to do. Just silence as this goes on for a few moments. She eventually stopped. The teacher just told her to get out. The student got suspended for a day or two. It was a bizarre experience. My Latin teacher was this really forgetful old man. Once, when we were in the middle of translating a paragraph, he suddenly left the room, and while he was out, 2 guys immediately jumped out of their seats. One pulled out a bag of bagels and started thumbtacking them all over the bulletin board, and the other guy turned off all the lights, turned on the TV, and put in the movie 300. When the teacher returned, he saw us all sitting there, earnestly watching 300. Looked slightly confused. Then sat down at his desk and started grading papers. He didn't notice the bagels until a week later. At my old school, everyone used the Wi-Fi during the day so they wouldn't use up their data or whatever. No big deal. But a bunch of kids were using the Wi-Fi to sext each other and got busted. We weren't allowed to have phones out after that. I was a sophomore in high school at the time, and I was in the library with my last period class. I was sitting at a table by myself. This girl who was a senior came up and sat next to me. She turns to me and says, "Hey, if I show you something, will you promise not to freak out?" I was like, I guess. Because now I was seriously interested, scared about what she was going to show me. She then lifts up her hoodie and had her 4-foot boa constrictor wrapped around her stomach. She was kinda on the bigger side and her hoodie was loose enough so you would have never seen it, and she managed to carry it around all day and never got caught. Literally weirdest experience I've ever had in high school. There was a weird kid who used to hang out under the bleachers at football games and look up at those sitting above from down below. It was not only creepy, but the girls made an issue out of it once they found out the pervy stuff he was doing. There was a guy in my school who used to go around and take sheets in random places. At first it started out in the urinals. Then it evolved to the windowsill of the bathroom. But then he started getting bolder and doing it in hallways and even the cafeteria. It was really bizarre. We called him the Phantom Eater and he was never caught. My friends and I were pretty sure it was this guy that was a grade under us. But we never knew for sure. When my friend was in 8th grade he caught a teacher clam baking, smoking marijuana in a car with all the windows rolled up. And when the window rolled up it looked like he lit the car on fire. Cool teacher. Sometimes he'd come into school high and play his guitar and sing to us. When I was a senior I walked into the bathroom and there were 2 freshmen in there. One standing by the sink snickering and the other one with his pants down and bare as in the urinal, obviously trying to sheet in the urinal. As soon as I walked in and we made eye contact I kind of just stopped and they looked at each other very awkwardly and the kid pulled up his pants and they shuffled out of the bathroom as quick as possible while silently snickering to each other. Mayo duck, that was so hilariously awkward. Like who would really put their bare ass in the urinal and try to sheet in it? It is such a weird sight to see a kid bent over looking you in the eyes while he's trying to squeeze sheet out of his ass into a urinal. Like what the duck? I still crack the duck up whenever I see that kid. Eating lunch in the restroom. Kids did that in my high school all the time. The actual lunchroom wasn't big enough. So everyone was scattered. That includes a group of girls who would eat in the bathroom. It was weird. In my high schools, graduating seniors usually spent the week before the exams playing pranks on people. Now most of it was usually harmless fun. Like shooting silly string at people, cups full of water on the ground, or lube on the railings. However, one student took it to the extreme. While I was sitting in the atrium eating lunch, yes, private high school kid here, I welcome the hate. I saw something was right by me. I thought it was nothing so I kept eating. Suddenly I heard a bunch of girls scream. I turn around and I shit you not, there's someone running naked with nothing on but a My Little Pony cape. Went to school with this girl. Straight A student but weird. One of the many weird things she would do was take Elmer's glue and spread it across one of her hands. She would let it sit on her hand until it had dried into a thin glue layer. And color the glue with markers. After she was done coloring it she would carefully peel the glue off so that she had a colored perfect little glue hand. And then eat it. On day I had to stay after school. I was sitting in our commons area on a bench and directly across from me were 2 kids who were kind of outcasts. They were different. But I tried not to look at them too much until I noticed they both had their tongues out, just pressing them up against the other one's tongue. No movement. Just stationary tongue pressing. So to start this out, I want to say that I have no problems with furries. Anything they like, they can like. As long as it doesn't harm anyone. There is an entire hall of my high school that an untold number of furries flock to during lunch. To get their furry thing going. They then have incredibly vigorous makeout sessions with an uncomfortable amount of public groping. At first, I think the security guards tried to stop their orgy thing. But they failed and so now they just try to contain it to that one area. There were some guys loitering by the urinals as I came into the bathroom. They all ran out giggling. As I'm standing there pissing, I start to smell something. I look over and one urinal down there is a flour tortilla shell with sheet in it. Literally a sheet taco. It was so strange. 9th grade English class. Look outside window. See senior boy absolutely going to town on his sophomore girlfriend. The most enthusiastic oral sex I have ever witnessed. Full shoulder movement. Dipping head up and down. You name it. I point this out to the teacher. Teacher, oh wow. He's really going for it. Isn't he? A guy was masturbating in class to this really hot long-term substitute teacher.